Live, Jim.
All right, welcome everyone to the Public Works Committee meeting. We'll begin by approving the minutes of the previous meeting. We have a motion to approve, second. Mr. Strainer on the second, Mr. Bruno on the motion. Ready for the question? All those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the minutes are approved. All right, well, how do you want to start, Kevin?
We'll start with solid waste.
Okay, we'll start with solid waste. John, if that's all right with everyone.
So
Um,
the first item we had on there under action agenda items and new business items was a request to apply for a grant. We're still kind of working through the details of this grant, which would be a municipal waste reduction and recycling program grant through DEC. So I'm actually not bringing this resolution today. Not until Scott and I get some solid numbers from DEC. This is an open-ended grant. I believe it closes as of January of 25, so we do have some time. This would be for our recycling center, if we go through with this, and if the committee and the board approves to go through with it. This would basically be for the center itself, any construction or capital needs that we would need. We are still looking at putting out an RFP with a company to market our recyclables, on the open market, but that's based upon whether or not we have funding in place for this building and whether or not we get this grant. I need a building to be able to put out the RFP for company to come in and put those recyclables on the market, but if I don't have a building, it's hard pressed for me to do that work. So with that being said, I'm not bringing this resolution today. Scott and I are still working through some details on that, and it will be within the next several months that I will come back to committee with more information.
Just an order of magnitude on the grant, how much would we be, you think, just?
I would say probably that 1.3 to 1.7, $1.8 million. So some of that may not be, it was based on before when we submitted the grant with EPA. It was based on significant equipment cost. We may not have some of those because if we are able to get a building, a couple of the companies that we've talked to about doing that recycling and putting it on the open market for us, they would provide us through a lease some of that equipment. So we wouldn't have to purchase those significant balers at $600,000 or whatever it may be. So.
It just refresh everyone's memory. We extended the existing contract that the different municipalities have for the pickup and disposal of recyclables. Was it extended, which was bid by the county on behalf of everyone? That was extended through the end of this year?
End of this year. So that's getting into our discussion items. That goes for the hauling of the towns and the tipping fees. So we put out a bid, and actually Julie and I just spoke this morning. She's putting out the bid for the tipping fees again in August so that all towns would have it for their budgets. But with that being said, the way that Scott and I are proposing that hauling, kind of the county hauling for the towns would be, we haul, we charge each town a certain amount of money for hauling, and it's based on mileage and such, pickups from their sites. They would pay the county for that tipping fee. We would in turn pay that tipping fee to the vendor, whoever that may be. So we would invoice the towns for the hauling and for the, whatever the fee may be for tipping. So that Julie's putting out that bid. We have received now both of our brand new hauling trucks or our container trucks. So we are ready, but the contracts end January 1st. So that would be the start of us. Now, with that being said, I've talked to Supervisor Thomas about this a little bit. There will be some changes to that solid waste division that I will need to add staff to be able to haul for the towns.
But you're viewing it more as, if I might, as an enterprise type of part of your budget. In others, there'll be revenue coming in to offset the expense.
Correct. The revenue will be coming from the towns.
I see. And I think it's very important that we do it that way and move forward quickly. I don't know what the other towns are experiencing, but we're experiencing difficulty on the pickup. side of the recyclables. The private haulers are having a difficult time. Did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, just so I was able to bring together some transfer station operators last month together just to talk, and obviously they have a lot of things in common, and they were able to voice some things they were dealing with, and that did come up with someone like their electronics pickups. They're just seeing more lag time between when they call for them to come in and when they do come in. So yeah, that seemed to be a common issue, is that they're just a little concerned about the pickups and the regularity of them. So
Yeah, I mean, especially in season, I mean, these bins are overflowing, and then you have to close them to whatever it is, that if it's plastic, then you close them with plastic. If it's tins, metal, you have to close it. And there's no way really to get the word out on that. It's
Mhm.
it's not a great situation.
which was helpful. So there was preliminary work done to get an estimate of how much, what would be the cost for the county to do the hauling, and it, overall, the preliminary analysis that was done, I think, last year showed that, everyone would be saving, some saving more than others. So that's kind of the basis of this moving forward. And then I was able to get, because there's the average hauls per month, but then we really need to know the peak hauls, because we don't want to be in a situation in summer where we don't have the capacity. So been able to gather kind of that peak data from all the transfer stations, and, working with Kevin just to kind of look through that plan and make sure we have capacity.
Kevin?
So the goal would be during budget, we would, of course, add a couple of positions to that solid waste division. But we would also, over the next several months, enter into contracts with the towns that we would haul for them. We would work certainly through Larry's office, but we would want all that in place by January 1st. So come January 1, the county would take over the hauling for all the towns within the county.
Wow, that would be, at least from our perspective, that would be excellent. I don't know about the other towns. Anyone wish to just comment on this at this time?
With the problem of getting people CDLs and stuff like that, I think that's going to be a factor at all.
Yeah, I'll add that in that solid waste division, right now, I have the current Scott's in that division, and then there's one other person that we have, which is considered the title is an auto mechanic. I've been kind of working with Jackie and some other towns that have solid waste divisions. The auto mechanic isn't the fit for that position. We certainly do need individuals with CDLs. I certainly would probably have one or two individuals that I know within my department would be applying for this position. I don't know what the titles will be yet, but the titles will certainly change. We repair all the containers that are at the town. So when a container gets damaged, it comes back to us, and that auto mechanic is the person who repairs those containers, but he's also the person who goes out and picks up county containers at county facilities and drops them off to whatever the site may be for the tipping. So we've had a couple counties provide us their titles in their solid waste divisions. Yes, it certainly will be difficult if, they do require a CDL. Fortunate enough, I know of a couple of people who are willing to do it in my department, but we still think there will be possibly a part-time position. One of those individuals who would be a driver as well as a person to repair the containers. Another one would just strictly be a driver. And again, I don't know what the title would be. And then the third person, if we get the grant for the composting facility that we've been discussing, they would be part-time, kind of helping maintain the containers, as well as the part-time doing the pilot program for the composting facility.
I'm just thinking outside the box, and certainly any town supervisor or any municipality can jump in on this, but why would the disposal cost of plastic in community A differ than the disposal cost of community B? So you're actually bidding the disposal part of the equation to get a bid for everyone.
Correct.
I see.
Correct.
And so, but the hauling costs, obviously, there's different miles, there's different distances and different numbers of time per year, that would vary from transfer station to transfer station.
Correct.
And the bid will be composed in such a way as that this one company will assist you in achieving the best markets for the recyclables, or,
Yes, but right now, we're not there with that portion of it
Okay.
yet. That I need a building for, and if I don't get a grant, then it would be me coming back to the committee and asking them if they would like to provide funding for me to build this facility. That's the recycling side of it. Currently, what will happen is we'll do the same thing that's being done today, is we'll put out the bid for the tipping, which would be a countywide bid. So if it's Perkins or somebody else who takes plastic and they charge us for us, that's what the towns would still pay. We would be the ones charging you for it. We would invoice you for whatever Perkins would charge.
I see. Well, it's going to give us a much better data also, don't you think, on recyclables?
it will,
and, more consistent data, and which will help us with our decision-making going forward, which has been one of the requests of our zero waste people, was to get our data on together comprehensively for the whole county. You're shaking your head. Yes, you're on board with that. Okay. Anyone else have any questions on the subject? Sounds like progress to me. Hopefully we, and I'll say, I mean, even if it doesn't achieve significant savings, I think that what it will do is it will improve on the system and the timely disposal of the recyclables. Because believe me when I tell you, if they're not picked up in a timely fashion, you become overflowing so fast. It's whether it's metals or cardboard or plastic, you name it.
Much better system.
Okay. Next up.
So that, we kind of got into the hauling for the towns that I was gonna kind of give to Scott. But I'll turn it over to him now for the working group update, our composting pilot program and such. So
Yeah, so the working group was established in March, so we've been meeting monthly since March, and yeah, we've had our 5th meeting. Feels like it's been productive. We have folks from local groups, Zero Waste Warren County, we have the Adirondack Compost Education Council, and then we have supervisors, E2, Merlino, and Stroud on board, and Kevin is involved as well. So we've been looking at both this idea that we're paying like 4 times as much to get rid of recyclables as municipal solid waste. Why is that? These are commodities that theoretically have value. So that was the connection to the company called Replenish, who has those direct relationships with the producers, so they can, actually change the economics of kind of the recycling side. So we've been working through that. We created a draft RFP kind of to think through what we want as a county for that, whoever that is, who might be able to bid on that project. And then, as Kevin said, we're kind of in the phase where we need to figure out the grant potential and look at the building before we put out the RFP. And then on the other side of that working group is looking at food scraps and composting. I feel like we've come to a consensus. We're on track to submit for a climate smart communities grant for July 31st. So we've been working with Warren County Planning. We're on track to submit, in the plan would be, and this is based on the organics management plan recommendations, is to do a pilot that processes food scraps on a piece of county property and includes drop-off sites in Warren County, mostly concentrated in the population centers. And this all kind of came from the recommendations of the organics management plan. Some folks on the committee were ready to go to this full-scale county facility, and then we want to prove that we can kind of see the demand, as well as that we can process food scraps on sites. We have a smaller scale project that we're submitting for this July 31st bid.
Kevin.
And that's the grant that Ethan Gaddy has already brought through planning to submit for. So I'll let Scott kind of get into it, but the details basically would be that we would limit it to 2 tons per week we would figure out what that number would be for, say, a 5 gallon bucket to give out to homeowners. There'd be a cutoff. And then what they would do is they would bring that to the transfer stations where we would have, say, 96 gallon containers that the county would bring back. We would pick up and replace at each transfer station that we put these containers at. We would drop off an empty one and we would take those to the composting facility. And then again, that goes back to that part-time position, or at least a person part-time running that compost facility. I think that's
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
details. So.
And been in conversations with Monroe County, who has a similar pilot with the town of Pittsburgh, which is a town of 30,000. So spoke with them on a few occasions, as well as the town of Bethlehem, who has a successful food processing on a piece of property outside of town. So yeah, this kind of came about based on recommendations and existing pilot programs that have been successful.
I mean, was any thought given to how the major producers, supermarkets, restaurants, and how to deal with that part of the stream and deal with them financially? I mean, historically, government's not good at running those enterprise funds, right? In other words, that, and have you given some thought to that?
As far as who would operate
How that part of the waste stream would be taken in and billed and.
Yeah, we've looked at, so Warren County has 15 large generators, which are, organizations that produce more than 2 tons of food scraps per week. There is an existing, like Price Chopper in Hannaford, use an anaerobic digester called AgriCycle, which, based on conversations with, Zero Waste and some of the other folks interested, is we want to do the kind of aerobic food scrap processing. So what we're not sure is, once you have a facility within 25 miles, then the large generators by the food scrap laws are mandated to start, utilizing. They're not required to utilize the facility that is within 25 miles, but they're mandated to start doing something with their food scrap. So through this pilot, Kevin and I have talked about a couple of maybe getting 1 or 2 large generators on board, just to at least work through what that would look like as far as capacity and, conversations with some of the other large generators. What I think we found is someone like Hannaford and Price Chopper, they seem to be in other areas hauling their food scraps to some centralized facility that they kind of already use. The town of Bethlehem is able to operate at least break even and maybe make a little without a lot of input from some of these large generators within their community. But sorry, I don't know if that quite answers the question.
Well, it
but-
does, because the question is, we would want to continue to encourage that.
Right.
We wouldn't necessarily say, well, no, you have to bring your green.
No,
waste.
so in effect, even if we had one and we didn't process, it would still mean that those generators have to process. So
I see.
even if we didn't necessarily do the processing.
Are you planning on sitting down with the major haulers and the people in the green recycling business as a group to make sure that this has a good fit with the haulers that are presently operating?
Yeah, as far as the private haulers who are in terms of the food scraps
Yes.
or in terms of,
Because in some places, they must be
so
having to
Casella has
comply,
an
right, they
arm.
must have to comply with the state law
Right.
already. And
Yeah, in general, I've been trying to connect more with private haulers, even, as we take over hauling, just, make sure that they know that this is coming. For example, Waste Management is the current, winner of the bid. So just to make sure that, we have conversations and, know who the kind of key folks are within these private haulers as well. But
part of the key here is to do this by shifting the costs onto the general taxpayer, right?
right,
Keep this as, you pay for what you dispose of.
and with food scraps, there would, there's the pilot more just to demonstrate, proof of concept that we can do aerated static pile composting as well as the demand. And then, after that is looking at, the models that look at tipping fees and the
I see.
finished compost project. So
That will come.
yeah, we
Right.
talked, we need to do a market analysis. We need to talk to
Right.
landscapers. We need to,
Just want to make sure we cover all those bases.
This pilot will be, I mean, it's a data collection for us. It's gonna give us a determination of should we be moving forward doing this.
Mr. Bruno.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question. I brought this up before. You're gonna give residents a 5-gallon bucket. And what do they do this time of year especially? You're gonna dump food scraps in there, what, keep it for a week and then you're gonna put food scraps in there. I don't wanna be opening that bucket after 2 or 3 days of 80, 90-degree weather. Plus, you're gonna take that to a central transfer station, open some container and dump it into there. Have you had any comments from other entities, areas? How do they deal with
yeah,
that? I mean,
so the town of Pittsford, so the 5-gallon buckets, and we use them, so Bill Richmond.
Let me just add another comment, but no, additionally, in areas like Thurman, Johnsburg, Warrensburg, I don't care, outlying areas. You're gonna have to secure those somewhere. You can't leave them out. I mean, it's just like having a campsite with bare tamper-proof containers. So anyway, just
Yeah. So, yeah, so conversations with other folks doing a similar pilot and just my own anecdotal research. So my wife, we're using the curbside pickup and they utilize a 5-gallon bucket that has this secure locking top.
okay.
And she was a little concerned about the smells and legitimately these kind of sealed buckets, we're not finding throughout the year any issue. Basically we have it for Adirondack compost, 2 weeks
Mhm.
is the pickup time. So, and we haven't had any of those issues.
I don't mean emanating out into the area. I mean, when you go and open that thing and dump stuff in.
Yeah, within a week, it's pretty minimal, but that is, definitely a concern. So the big, one of the things that came up through Pittsburgh is people who get the 5-gallon bucket, and we would do it based on a fixed number of.
I just think, myself, from having worked in chemical plants,
Uh-huh.
paper mills, my sense of smell is gone. So it doesn't bother me much. But my point is, I could see other people possibly not wanting to participate just by virtue of dealing with that. I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, I agree. I think for the pilot, it would probably be the early adopters who kind of are more in the know and kind of can see what this process would be like. The town of Pittsford, they do weekly pickups. So the big bins at the transfer stations, they do weekly pickups. They occasionally, in peak times, they might do twice a week just to deal if there is kind of an overflow or anything that comes up. But I think the saying is with compost, people smell with their eyes, like they see a problem and we need to stay ahead of that. So that's definitely been kind of top of the list, is even if it's just the perception,
Sure.
how can we kind of combat that head on? But yeah, and I think with the frequency of the pickups and kind of the bins we're using, that's fairly minimized, but.
Thank you.
So is there a cost for people to drop that off? I'm just saying, where's the incentive for people to participate?
So for the pilot, there would be no charge, a certain number of residents. We would basically be gathering data from them. Town of Pittsford uses QR codes where the participants kind of enter some basic data of how much material they kind of entered into the system. So for the pilot, there would be no charge, but seemingly in the future, we would look at.
And the incentive would be they'd be throwing away less waste, which in turn paying the town less money to throw their.
That's kind of what I'm getting at, because if people wouldn't even recycle if it costs
Right,
money,
right,
and they barely do that now, they still throw it in the garbage.
Next item, Kev.
I think that's it. We're done with the solid waste and recycle. We can move into Parks and Rec.
Yeah, before, just a privilege of the floor. I didn't open up the committee initially to privilege of the floor. Is anyone wishing to address the committee at this time? Okay, Kevin, let's move right into Parks and Rec and Railroad.
Yeah, and I will turn that over to
More?
Sure, yes, two action items, please. The first is a request to renew a contract simply with Thermos Snowmobile
Thanks,
Club
Scott.
for the access to the right of way of the railroad for access to trails. No fee associated, and it sunsets usually April every year. This is renewal.
Mhm. Mr. Bruno on the motion, Ms. Medan second. Any discussion? Ready for the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Okay, the second item is to apply for a ZBGA capital grants program. We currently have a ZBGA grant with Up Yonder Farm. It's a 4-year grant for $15,000 a year. That is an operational support grant. This goes after capital, the concept of a capital improvement to support the operation as well for what's considered the Natural Heritage Collection. And it's done through the funds are appropriated through the EPF, and it goes through New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, Historic Preservation. We kept it under 100,000, 90,500, so there's no match. But the intent is to go after supporting our museum, which has the 40+ species in the natural collection. It doesn't have air conditioning in there currently, so trying to upgrade that HVAC, possibly look at a backup generator, and also one of the aspects of the ZBGA grant is access to it for the public, and we would consider improving the courtyard at Up Yonder. Currently, it's got a lot of decking area and access to doors. We could probably raise that, open it up, and have better educational components in that area to support their mission. So,
Let's bring this forward for consideration. Mr. Bruno on the motion, Mr. Strainer on the second. Any further discussion?
Just to clarify, it's for applying, accepting, approving, signing, and any future amendments.
Those that made the motion, yes?
Fine.
Yes. Mhm. Okay, we're ready for the question. All those in favor of the motion to apply for the grant and to administer it as specified signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I carry. Thank you. Next item.
Next item is under information for discussion review. The first one is a railroad washout update. As you all know, we contracted with, we put it out to bid and contracted with Hal Raven to do the work on the railroad. They have since completed the 2 washouts that were down in Thurman and the washout that was in Reparia. So the track, as of yesterday afternoon, is back open in its entirety for Rev Rail to use the entire track. Rev Rail is going to start manning their Thurman station. We did receive an email from Rob Hart saying, you know, it's July. They're going into August soon. Kids will be going back to school, so they're just trying to find the staff to be able to man that station there and do the trips out of the station. The second part of that railroad discussion is kind of maintenance moving forward. As Hal was out there, he came up from Corinth all the way up to Reparius. And as he came up through there, he had noticed certain maintenance items throughout the entire track, not from Reparius to North Creek, but at least up to Reparius that needed attention. He's going to provide us a synopsis of what he saw. We were fortunate enough that Dean got to see some of these because he was out there with him in the high rail. I do have budgeted this year some high rail equipment for one of my trucks, so we can continue to do those inspections. But there will be some things that we need to address, but once we get that from Mr. Raven, I'll bring that back through committee. One of the other things that came up as a topic was the caboose that is sitting out in Thurman. There's been some discussion again about the possibility of purchasing that caboose. We would have to put it out to bid. And I know there's several individuals who are interested in it. So if the pleasure of the committee would be to put that caboose out to bid, we could certainly work with Julie to put it out, or we don't, and it stays there. It's not being used. As you all recall, when Saratoga North Creek was there, they turned it into kind of a snack bar that they were going to use, and it's been sitting vacant ever since.
What's the pleasure of the committee relative to the Mr. Shrimp?
What's that worth?
I don't know. We could certainly come up with some numbers, and I can email something out to the committee. Again, it was a caboose that was used for years by Saratoga and even Hudson River. I think kind of Hudson River, it was originally, I think, our caboose. They had used it as they were doing Thomas the Train and other things up there. Then it was brought down to Thurman, set off on a side kind of rails that were set in place, but all by Saratoga North Creek. And then they hooked it up kind of to the septic system so that they could have basically a snack bar there, and they never used it.
Isn't it wood? Is that not rotting or anything? Is it in-
I haven't gotten my eyes on it in a while, but
The exterior is not bad. The interior, we haven't gone thoroughly through the interior, and to your point of the question of the value, we'd have to go through it. to
Yeah.
Look at it.
Cause I used to like that idea of the snack bar there, cause it kind of brought people to that area. And I think at one point in time it was worth like 10,000 or something. So I don't know what it'd be worth now, just sitting there and,
I will add that we did put it out to bid before, and I think Warrensburg High School had put in a bid, but it was a very, very low number, somewhere like $500 or something like that.
Is that the same caboose that was in Reparius, or is this a different?
It was in repairs at one time, yeah. Yep.
you want to buy it, don't you?
Okay.
It is, it's pretty neat, it really is. It's a unique thing and I just hate to give it away. You know, maybe it could be the museum. Um,
We could certainly come up with a number just based
Yeah.
on what I mean, I can certainly go online and see what cabooses are going for today. So,
I mean, I think the question though is, are we prepared to get rid of it? Are we disposing?
well, if we're not gonna use it, yeah, you know, let's
We're not using it. It's
just
just,
recycle it to somebody.
it's just gonna deteriorate,
Pretty cool
you
though.
know. Structures, buildings that aren't being cared for, they go pretty quickly if you're not, you know.
Well, someone could make a go of this with some kind of snack bar someplace. I don't know where they would put it, but.
I know the one in Reparius was pretty successful at the time.
Well, yeah, that's the same one he said.
What's the sentiment of the committee is,
Well, we can research it and see what happens.
Okay.
You know, worst comes to worst, we can always put on a minimum too. You know, if someone can't reach the minimum, somewhere along the line, someone's gonna buy this.
is that
Unique
enough
piece.
construction? Next item.
Yeah, so we had a visit, as well as as well as did other departments, tourism, but Jonathan Rivera, Assemblyman from the 149th District out near Buffalo, go Bills, is the chair of the subcommittee in regional tourism development, as well as a member of the tourism parks, arts and sports development for the state. He blessed us with a visit to Up Yonder Farm, which was fantastic. Both Kristen and I gave him a tour. Mr. Simpson was available as well to meet up with us. And it went very well. I guess he's doing a tour on the East Coast here and everything from, Albany and the VICs and the Blue Mountain region, just to get a sense of what parks are like. It went very well, and I look forward to hearing back from the staff about some of the things we discussed. All right, and lastly, we had lunch with the chef with the Friends of Up Yonder Farm, and if you'll indulge me here, Matt Sproul, the president. Just wanted to say, please relay to the Parks and Rec Committee, lunch with the chef attendance was over 170. Net profit was over $9,500, which was a record for both. And he just wanted to know, and I concur with this is a discussion I had with him, but this definitely reflects a strong community support for the farm itself and the efforts of the Friends of Up Yonder. There was a change in some folks that had to leave the area from the original board. And I guess we did not downshift it. Well, yeah, it's without a glitch. The Friends of Up Yonder is doing quite well. And we're very happy about that and very supportive. Some people got more dessert than others at the meeting, but there was a lot of fundraising going on. And
gotten my chocolate cake yet.
I know. So, and I apologize. Mr. Tafflin was there as well. It was a good time. So the friends are doing great things for the farm. And we look forward to some projects, including current funding, maybe bringing some deck furniture to the museum as well. So we can do it. That's all I have.
Good, good, Dean, thank you. So, hey, Joe, anything else?
that's it.
Okay, now we can move into Public Works.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
Dean, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
So the first item we have on there is the request for a new contract. This is for the construction contract for the Palisades Road Culvert Replacement Project. The bids are due today. So we will have a number before the board meeting, but this is one of the culverts, the last culvert that was due to the washout back in December.
Chair, I'll entertain a motion, to bring this forward. Mr. Strainer, Mr. Bruno on the second, any discussion? You have the results to the board before the meeting.
We will have the results.
Ready for the question then? All those in favor of number one, signify by saying aye.
I,
Opposed? Carried. Second item?
Next item on there is a new contract, and this is for the construction contract for County Route 35 Diamond Point Road. This was one of the road projects that we had for this year that needed a little bit more design. The design is complete. The bids will be open on the 13th of August. And again, I think the board meeting is the 15th, as I recall, or maybe the 17th. So we will certainly have the bids before the board meeting. So you'll have the numbers for the board meeting, but as always, it's lowest responsive bidder.
Sure. Let's bring this forward for consideration. Mr. Strainer, Mr. Mayday on the second, order of magnitude on what your engineers estimate.
I want to say somewhere in the vicinity of 700,000.
All right.
Next time we have on the.
I think I gotta call the
I'm
question.
sorry.
Mr.
I
Bruno,
just have a what does this entail briefly?
It's a reconstruction, in certain sections, overlay, new drainage work, for a large portion of Diamond Point Road.
Thank you.
And if most of you don't know, that's the road that runs between exit 23 over to Route 9N
is that on the, which side of the mountain?
on the downside towards Route 9N.
that road needs a lot of TLC.
Yes. it
That's a
does.
busy road as well. Okay, we're ready for the question then. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Said him, Kevin.
Next item is the, I believe it's I'm sorry, increase capital project H411 Corinth Road over Clendon Brook. This is to fund the construction portion of that project. That's the federal aid project. And this is for 1.855 million for that culvert replacement. And we have the money in transfers to capital projects, D9950.
Okay, let's bring this forward for consideration. Mr. Merlino, thank you. Mr. Bruno on the second. Any discussion? This is, these bridge and culvert costs are just unbelievable, how much they've increased.
Yeah, this is one of our Culvert New York projects, and this one we held off doing any sooner because the town of Queensbury was doing Clendon Brook on Luzerne Road, and they were using kind of ours as a detour, so we held off. I believe they've got their culvert in place, so this will be good for us to get this one going next.
Being no other questions, we're ready for the question. All those in favor of increasing this capital project signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I carry.
Next item on there is number 4 is a miscellaneous request to establish road projects, and these are part of our budget numbers from last year. We just wanted to make sure that we were putting the right amount to each one of these projects. So that would be to number 1, a crack sealing project, number 2, a guide rail project, and then the Diamond Point project that I just spoke about. And the numbers are there for each one of the projects.
Okay, let's bring this forward for consideration. Mr. Strainer on the second, Ms. Mayday on the second. Thank you. Any further discussion? Ready for the question? All those in favor of establishing these road projects signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I carry.
Next item on there is a request for transfer of funds, and this is to fund some of those projects that I just referred to. The 3 at the bottom of that transfer, which are Country Club Road, that was where the money for last year for the road projects for this year was placed. So this is just moving that money now to those projects. And then the other funding is coming from projects from 2023 that we have closed out.
Okay, let's bring this forward. Mr. Strainer, Mr. Merlino on the second. Discussion. Ready for the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Not carried. Next item.
Number 6 is a miscellaneous resolution to adopt the new MS4 plan. The plan is attached. This is a plan that we will have in the county at the municipal center as well as at Soil and Water District and at the Department of Public Works. This is the one that we just amended or created the new local law for this year. And this is the plan that goes along with that local law.
Okay. Bring this forward. Mr. Strainer, Mr. Bruno, this is administered through Jim Lieberman.
It is correct.
Jim Lieberman. All right, then, we're ready for the question. All those in favor of the adoption of the MS4 plan signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
We have an addition to this, which you don't have in front of you, but it came out of county facilities is I have consulting agreements with engineers to do multidisciplinary, do any type of work that we may need that we can't do with the capacity in hand. Charles Wallace in the codes department is short on staff and they reached out to a couple of those firms that we have. And one in particular was Labella, who does have a code enforcement division within their engineering firm. So this would amend the current contract to add those titles in. This is only a term agreement. It's on an on-call basis. Charles, at this point, may not even use the capacity of Labella, but I don't have an ability, if he does need to use it, those titles. So this would be to amend that contract to add those titles within that contract.
Bring this forward, Mr. Bruno, Mr. Mayday on the second. Yeah, I don't see the harm in this at all. If we don't need it, we don't use it. But if we get in a jam and we need some help, it's there for us. All right, then, ready for the question. All those in favor of this added resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Not carried. Next item, Kevin.
Next item is under discussion items, and I have 2 items. Number 1 is, as of yesterday, was kind of the close of, I had put out a email to all the towns within Warren County who, I made them all aware of the WQIP, which is a water quality improvement program grant that would provide snowplow equipment, and I'll emphasize that with a reduction of salt use. I had 3 towns submit for equipment. That would be Hague, Bolden, and Queensbury. And then, of course, the county is submitting for some equipment as well. This will be a grant that Ethan Gaddy and the planning department, actually, I apologize. This will be a grant that the regional planning board is putting in for us. They're doing one for Washington County and the towns in Washington County as well. And if we can go up to $250,000 worth of equipment. So we thought it would be a good idea to kind of combine them together and show a partnership. Although if some of the equipment, which I believe maybe might have been in the town of Queensbury, had a little bit more equipment than we expected it to be, I think they were upwards of $200,000. So that may have to go in as a separate application and we'll combine the other 2, but definitely discuss that they partner with us in reducing the salt as well. So Ethan Gaddy, or I'm sorry, Regional Planning Board will be putting in that grant by the 31st. And that's when all the CFA funding grants are available. So that's that. And I also know that the planning department and the Regional Planning Board is putting in several other grants for, I believe, the city of Glens Falls for a salt shed, the town of Chester for a salt shed, and for the town of Stony Creek for a salt shed as well. So good news that we're submitting for the grants, and I hope it to be good news to come back and say that we in the towns all received those grants based on what we're doing with salt reduction in our area. The other thing I have is a quick project update for all. I'll kind of go through our roads fairly quick so that we don't drag out the time on this committee, but Schroon River Road, County Route 10 in Warrensburg is complete. That was one of our roads for this year. Horicon Avenue, County Route 11, which is a small section by Valley Woods and Highland Drive. That's to start after Labor Day. River Street in Warrensburg, Blind Rock Road in Queensbury, and Haviland Road in Queensbury have all been completed. Palisades Road in Brant Lake was supposed to start the latter part of this month based on schedules and paving schedules by our contractor. It's probably pushing to an August start, and completion probably by the end of August. Peaceful Valley Road in Johnsburg and Main Street in Johnsburg are both underway. Diamond Point I just spoke about, we'll have the bids back today and that will start after Labor Day as well. South Johnsburg Road in Johnsburg is complete and again, Main Street is underway and they're actually moving very quick on Main Street in Johnsburg. They expect to be ahead of schedule on completing that project. In fact, they could be putting down pavement next week. And that one was to be finished by them before school started for this year because the Johnsburg High School is right on that street. And that's all I have. Just a quick kind of update. We had a lot of tree damage on roads last year. We did not have any roads wash out on us. We were fortunate enough for that. We and I think OES has asked the towns, please keep track of numbers of cleanup that you guys had. There may be, the state has 30 days to declare an emergency or a declaration of emergency for that work. So there could be funding coming down the line. We're not sure yet. But just keep track of what you've been putting towards it. I believe by end of next week, we will have most of ours wrapped up and cleaned up. And that's all I have.
Okay. Anything else? I'll open up the floor. Anyone bring one? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Bruno, Mr. Strainer, all in favor?
Aye.